Hi and welcome to this video in which we'll be talking about lesson planning for the Delta. My name's William. I did the Delta in June and July 2019. I did it intensively over a period of 5 weeks, and for the assessed lessons I did a bottom-up reading lesson, writing letters, the past simple and compound nouns.
Hi, my name is Yomna. I did my Delta intensively in June, July 2019. Took me 6 weeks. So for my skills lesson, I did reading lesson focused on skinning and scanning skills for lower levels, and a writing lesson for higher levels about writing formal emails. As for the language, I taught modals and extreme adjectives for higher levels.
Hi, my name is Usama. I did Module 2 as the extensive course, which took 9 months. My 4 lessons, or the observed lessons, were for grammar, I did the language composition. For lexes, that was phrasal verbs. For the skills, I did reading, which was focusing on deducing meaning of unfamiliar vocabulary from context. And the last one was writing, that was focused on language for cohesion.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I also did the Module 2 extensively like Osama. As I recall, I did my first lesson on grammar. It was present perfect simple and past simple. The next one was on listening for radio drama. And then I did a lesson on collocations, and then the final one was writing how to write a topic sentence for writing task 2 IELTS.
Okay, so in this video we'll be talking about some of the differences and some of the challenges of lesson planning for the Delta. So the first question to ask here is, how is the Delta lesson planning different from those that you will have done before for the TSP, or maybe like for your final year observations?
I think the lessons were fairly similar, but there were some extra parts on the Delta lesson. For example, on TSP we've got the class profile, but on the Delta we also have students profile, which analyze each student individually, like the age, why are they here, their strengths and weaknesses generally, and their strengths and weaknesses in this specific lesson. We also got the rationale or the commentary bit, which is basically why you're doing this lesson and why are you doing it that way.
Okay. The depth of the lesson plan and the fact that you have to think about every single thing that you're doing and rationalize it. You're not just choosing random activities for the sake of them being fun. No, you're choosing specific activities to fix a specific issue within the student's language. And everything needs to be written very
detailed.
What you're doing and exactly how you're doing it, what you're saying, what the students are saying. So it's very, very detailed.
I think the individual profiles could easily be 10 pages on their own.
Yeah.
Of course, you only have those students for maybe 2 LSAs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very important, I think, to collect as much information as you can.
But honestly, at the very beginning when I started the Delta, I was a bit worried about oh my god, it's a 30-page lesson plan, and I thought it was really intimidating. But once I got into it, and once you know what you need to write, it's not as bad as it seems.
But obviously, if you're working on 25 hours, it's very time consuming. You can't just wait to do the lesson plan because you're also doing something else called background essay. So the lesson plan on its own, I think you would need at least 2 weeks before you do the actual lesson. But yeah, you needed to allocate a good portion of time to just focusing on the staging and your rationale behind each activity. Why are you doing this lead-in? Why are you doing it like that?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it with these specific students in this way? why, lots of whys.
So generally you've got to rationalize what you're doing in class. Like you're doing something for a purpose, not just to fill in the like the time. Maybe something to have fun, but again, that would lead to something later in the lesson. And things should be linked. It could be maybe a stage you do at the beginning of the lesson that links forward to something that will happen at the end. Like first they notice the gap in the language, and then throughout the lesson they get the language that they need to fill this gap. And by the end of the lesson, they are aware at least that there was an issue in the language, and now they have the language, or they have the tool that helped them with this.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think as well, something that was kind of drilled into us throughout was ensuring these kind of like reflection stages throughout. So, not even just like at the beginning and at the end, but throughout, after every task, why did we do this? What have we learned from this? And how will this actually help you outside of the classroom? So it's not just a case of going through the stages and then but you're making them aware at each stage, kind of like how they relate and how they fulfill their needs. And the other big difference, I think, the other big difference for me was it was the first time as well I've ever done, say, a skills analysis. As opposed to a language analysis. Like even if on the TSP you've done a skills lesson, it's doubtful that you've actually analysed the language or the skill in the same way as is needed here.
Like for example, you're teaching academic writing IELTS essay, so you need to analyze the genre of the academic essay, like what kind of language is used, what is the content, what is the layout, the format. So basically you're looking at not the language that you're using while doing the writing, it's like the process, the genre. Like this is what we mean by skills analysis. So it's a bit deeper, and of course if there are some language you need to analyze that as well, but
and it kind of came back. I mean, you reminded me there of the acronym that we were kind of taught in module 1, like CLOGS. Which for me worked as a really good, useful sort of framework for just making sure that the skills analysis was all there. So what was it, like the content, layout, organisation,
Nexus,
the grammar and the style, just making sure that all of those different elements are kind of there and explored. And that kind of leads on to the next bit, which is the background essay. Because of course with the skills analysis and with the language analysis, most of that will be researched and written up in an essay form, which was 2,500 words or so. And then of course there's a lot of crossover between the two in the background essay and the lesson plan. So in terms of what you were talking about with kind of like the justification or the rationale behind like the activities that you use, that's always linking back to the theory that would be in the essay. How else did the essay and the lesson plan kind of like interlink?
I would say the learner's issues. So in total you've got to describe 5 issues of different learners, different ages, different nationalities as well, and backgrounds. And they should include like issues with the meaning, form, and pronoun. I know it's like there are 3, but you might like have a couple for each. Maybe the main ones that are common, let's say, in the context that you're teaching. And another thing was
the analysis.
The analysis part. So it should include, of course, the same things like meaning, form, and pronoun, with any variations. When it comes to pronunciation, for example, it covers like everything about pronunciation in the part, like connected speech, like word stress, sentence stress, intonation, and so on.
Given these differences, how long would you say it took you on the extensive to write the lesson plan?
Not less than a week, because I would rehearse the lesson first with another group, and then make some changes, and then maybe rewrite it. So I needed the time to test it out first, make some changes, and then do the actual lesson. So minimum 5 days.
And I would say in total, like 24 hours, if you split the work, like 2 hours per day or 3 hours. So actually I used to spend my weekend working on the lesson planning thing. So if I count the number of hours, I would say minimum of 24. It could be a bit more than this.
I think on the intensive course we didn't have that luxury because it was just 6 weeks and 5 lessons. 4 of them were observed. So we were having an observed lesson per week. So you get your feedback, you plan for your next lesson, and so on. So because of the time problem, at the beginning, it took me like the whole weekend. So let's say if I'm teaching on a Sunday, I would spend the whole weekend planning just for the lesson. But later on, it got easier, and I started planning like for one day for the lesson plan and the other for the background essay, and I was good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings in the background essay. Like, I mean, I would teach on a Sunday, and then by the next day, I'd decide to focus for my next LSA, and then I'd start doing the background reading to finish both the essay and the plan by Friday afternoon. So that was probably like a 5-day process of kind of researching and then writing. I would always do the essay first, and then the plan after that. And then make necessary kind of like amendments based on the tutor feedback on the Saturday. The next question. Were there any parts of the plan that you found particularly challenging? For me, one of the biggest challenges was, the time management, as we've discussed, making sure that everything was done, but also it's the first time as well that I've had to do skills analysis. That was something that was brand new for me. I'd never been required to do that on the TSP. So that was like a whole new type of writing and type of analysis that I needed to train myself to do at the same time as writing an assessed essay. So it was somewhat experimental, the first one, just to see if I had like the right idea behind what needs to be included. And the level of detail that had to go into that, because it's no longer just like practicing the skill, but like really trying to get to the bottom of it to develop the students' skills.
For me was, like Sarah was saying, about the depth of your lesson plan. So I had this problem personally that I'm not really a detail-oriented person. And every single time I would have my post-observation, and the tutor would ask me, why did you do this and why did you do that? And it's just, I would assume that because it's in my head, then it's okay. But you shouldn't do that on the Delta. Everything you think about, all your reasons have to go into the lesson. That's why I found the assumptions and the commentary bit specifically difficult at the beginning, because I wasn't sure what the tutor wanted to see or what the observer wanted to see.
Right. For me, the part about examples of students' issues and mistakes in an area of language. That actually happened in the first observations, or the first 2 observations. So what helped me with this later is that I started at the beginning of the course, knowing that I'm going to do the observation with that class, to make down any like examples of their mistakes, which will relate to the lesson that I'm going to teach them later.
I think my biggest challenge was at reaching or achieving the aim of the lesson using the specific activity, basically the design of the activities or the choice of activities. It was challenging, especially with skills lessons. How would you show that there's development throughout the stages, and that there's an element of challenge as well in the beginning, leading to, the students being able to overcome those issues, and for the observer to see that, okay, this sub-skill has been developed within 1 hour. So that was very challenging for me.
And what about the advice then to overcome these challenges?
I think what helped me was I had experience. I had 4.5 years experience before I started doing the Delta. I didn't just jump from the TSP to the Delta. I don't really think it's a good idea. But I had taught, I played smart. I would choose to teach a lesson that I had taught before and proved successful. And maybe I would just focus on it into from a different angle, Delta style, think about everything in more detail. But I wouldn't. Well, you can. It's a chance for you to experiment, of course. But if you want to play it safe, yeah, choose something that you are comfortable with, you are confident with. You tested it out before, it worked fine, and then you do it from the perspective of Delta with more detail.
Yeah, and as what you were saying about the individual profile, like I'm not sure how it worked on that, but on the intensive, we kind of divided the workload a little bit. So if you're doing an intensive thing, one thing that you could do is, because you're all teaching the same group, it's not your class, but it's just like on the CELTA where it's a group of students coming in for some free classes. We kind of divided it so that we interviewed a certain number of students, maybe 3 or 4 students, and then from those interviews we built up individual profiles, which were sufficiently in depth because we were only focusing on 3 or 4 out of like 20. So we managed to then kind of break it down and really get to know those individuals. I mean, the drawback of that is maybe you didn't get to know the whole class. But we managed to build up really, really in-depth kind of student profiles, like individual profiles as a result. Over the extensive, it was your class, wasn't it? So that you would have had.
Yeah. Like the observation was in one of the lessons that, like within a course with a specific group. So yeah, I had like a list of their names with enough space, maybe from the beginning of the course, knowing that I'm going to teach that specific area. So I would just listen to their like utterances and make any notes about mistakes that they have in that part.
Did you make any up?
Well, actually, yeah. At some point, like sometimes you have those quiet students in class that don't speak that much. You might even find these mistakes in the writing, so it doesn't have to be something that they say in a wrong way. And maybe I would make something up because, like, I've taught that lesson before, for example. I know at that level students would usually make mistakes in these parts.
Yeah, it's like you anticipated problems.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're doing the extensive, and like, what helped me was that the adult program manager during the time would come and ask me if I wanted to teach a specific level. And I would know in advance that, okay, I'm teaching intermediate, for example, and I know that my observed lesson would be 2 weeks from the start of the course. So I would give them the needs analysis in the first lesson. And I would, if my focus of the lesson is on present perfect teaching, and the present perfect, for example, I would word my questions in the needs analysis so that it includes some elements of this specific language, because I'm trying to find out whether they know how to use it or not. Because back then there was no time to do, on top of that, to do diagnostics and to collect data, just like what we did with Module 3. So it's at a certain point when you start, getting your head around the course, the earlier the better. That's what I would say. Don't leave things till the last minute.
For me, what I did was I used a lot of Post-its. So basically, I would just write down all my ideas on Post-its and just put it around the room. My living room was very colorful back then. And then put it down nicely into a paragraph of assumptions or commentary. It helped me a lot because instead of thinking of the ideas and the wording at the same time, I broke it down into like a lot of ideas, a lot of bullet points, and then wording them nicely. So that helped speed up the process of writing the lesson plan.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Using bullet points, I think, was something that really, really helped, at least in terms of organising and then adding the depth in after that.